co-host and co-facilitator, Gabby Caro. So Gabby was the youngest of our group. Gabby is a student at Texas Tech University in the Rawls College of Business. She is part of what is called the Mission Possible team. So in this Scoville Business Leadership Program, which is a 4-year program at Texas Tech, students are selected to enter into the program. They have to apply, they're selected. And once they come in, they receive lots of different opportunities in business, including the opportunity to pick a company and work alongside that company and shadow the individuals in that company. So I was very fortunate that Mission Possible called me and said, hey, can we work with TERN Mentoring? We love the program and we want to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. So one of the projects is what we're on today, which is this project of doing a video podcast, connecting with leaders across the United States. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Gabby. So Gabby, I'll let you open it up and ask these business leaders maybe to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what's going on today.
Yes, ma'am. As Tina said, my name is Gabby, and I was actually born and raised here in Lubbock, so I love everything about tech. And I just had a few questions for us just to kind of kick it off and get us to know each other a little better. So the questions were the company you guys work for, what's their role within your company, and kind of describe a little bit about what their business is like, and then how long you've been in the business for. And Christina, if you would love to kick us off today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'd love to. First, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to be here today with these esteemed colleagues and having the chance to work with TERN as well as university. So I've been at Navy Federal Credit Union for about 4 years now. I have been in the world of financial services and HR for, gosh, over 20 years in terms of employment and hiring people and looking at career and development, things like that. So absolutely love the topic and to be able to be here today. I think a huge part of what we're really looking at too is just how are things like AI and technology and changes and what customers and consumers need, how are all those changing? And how do we need to be able to continue to be nimble, right? That's for our current workforce as well as for our future workforce. So what I'm really excited about the conversation today, to learn from my peers in the conversation too, on how are we all thinking about applying a lot of the awesome skills that people are learning through university, applying those in the workforce and really focusing on what are those positive outcomes we can have for our customers, our members, and our colleagues. So really taking that academic to applied to outcome.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Christina. Next, if Derek would love to answer it next.
All right, I'll try to remember all the questions. I'm Derek Vella. I have been a recruiter for about 5 years, with my current organization about almost 2 years now. Mainly, I see everything from the very beginning. So I guess that's kind of the perspective I'm looking to share today. As far as like going out there and finding these candidates and, you know, the qualities we're looking for and how that would apply to our organization and, you know, how we can kind of help match these, I guess, skills to whatever departments need those skills and how they're going to best fit with all the senior leadership and things like that. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then if Annie Fowler would love to answer next.
Sure. So I'm Annie Fowler. I am Chief People Officer at what's called Sound Physicians. I've actually been at this organization for 17 years. So I've been here a really long time. So either I don't know any better or I love it here. But my organization is a nationwide medical group. And we see patients at the sickest times of their life. So in the emergency department, in the hospital, in critical care units, or under the knife in surgery. So that's what my medical group does. And so I feel it's a privilege to be here leading people. I wake up every day trying to make Sound a great place to work, which means I'm focused on engagement and having people come here to be mission driven, to really apply themselves and be a part of this wonderful thing that we're doing. And so when I think about graduates and folks coming into the work environment, it's interesting that I think for generations, newer generations, to really be mission driven. We found that really the individuals want to go and work for someone and something that is larger than themselves. And so I think that's something that can really create enthusiasm for graduates. And so, Derek, I'm also a born recruiter. I recruited for 25 years, essentially. Came into the CHRO role, and now feel like I can make an even bigger impact. And so would love to connect with you at some point too, if there's any other mentorship that I can offer at the early stages of your career. But it's I just wanted to acknowledge that.
So thank you.
Wow, guys, making connections already. Okay, so next, if Miss Lisa Blair Davis could answer the questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Gabby and Tina, for having me here and being a part of this group. So I am in a career transition right now. I just left Johnson & Johnson after 30 plus years. Many thought I was retiring, and I said, I'm not retiring. I'm just exploring what my next gig is. So that's a little bit underway right now, and looking really on a personal level, which I think many of you will be going through, is what type of company do you want to join? Where do you want to be? What's important to you? I had a tremendous experience at Johnson & Johnson. My last role, I led all of global human resources for our med tech division, which is about 32 billion in sales and 70,000 employees across many, many countries around the globe. So a very dynamic role, but now I'm kind of exploring what's next. Healthcare, I feel like, is a calling. So Annie, like you, I mean, to show up every day and advance patient care and care for people when they're at their most vulnerable really is something that I feel connected to. But if I think about workplace, if I think about kind of what individuals are looking for, never has there been a time where we've had such varying degrees of differences that people are looking for out of work. And I feel like COVID and the pandemic really spotlighted and highlighted a number of those, but it's generational differences, it's location differences, it's how and where people get their work done, what type of flexibility, what type of routine do people want. So that's definitely something I'd be happy to explore further with all of you through this dialogue today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And next, if Miss Lisa Sordia could answer the question.
Great. Good morning. I'm Lisa Sordilia, and I am the Chief People Officer at Energage. I have been here for 8 years, and Energage is a tool that helps companies really get feedback from their employees on the employee experience so that they can then use that to build an even greater culture, to recruit talent who have the same values and alignment with their organization. So we do that through the Top Workplaces program on a national level. We partner with USA Today, and we have many, many regional partnerships. And having been here for 8 years, having been a customer before, I am also lucky enough to be able to be involved in those programs and get to travel to some of the events and speak and really just learn what our clients are, experiencing. And I think it resonates with this group from the perspective of students entering into the workforce, really trying to find what are your goals and where do you align, and really being able to sort through that, whether it's through the interview process. But there's lots of different ways to do that as well. Additionally, I do volunteer as the president of a regional SHRM chapter with about 400 members outside of Greater Philadelphia. And so for me, another big component of my career has been just finding a community. HR can be a lonely job at times, so having a community of other people is really critical to your success. So thank you so much for having me today.
Perfect. Thank you. And last but not least, can Miss Rachel Dominguez please answer the questions?
Yeah, so shout out to my fellow SHRM past presidents or presidents. I am the past president of our local SHRM chapter here in Lubbock, Texas. We have about 300 members, and again, community is a big part of what I do. I have been in HR for about 20 years. I'm an HR manager for Lubbock County, so I handle all things HR related when it comes to the county. And I would tell you that for me, part of joining a government agency, which I've been at the city and now at the county, public service and service to community is a big tenet of what we do. So much of what we see and do, yes, there are day-to-day tasks that aren't necessarily service oriented, but I don't think there's a person at Lubbock County who doesn't have a servant's heart when it comes to what we do every day, because we are serving these citizens in our community. So that is something that has been close to my heart for many years, is finding the folks that have that servant's heart and then working with them, mentoring them. I've done lots of mentorship over the years, and I think that's something we have fallen out of for a while. And so especially post-COVID, I have been on a mission to do as much mentorship as I can with as many students as I can. It's interesting to say, what does public sector do? Because most folks don't think about what we do until they ask, oh, you guys do that too? And so there's a lot of behind the scenes things that happen when it comes to the public safety and the public sector that goes unnoticed. I think you see the flashy things that happen, but the county does a lot of things throughout the community every day. I don't know a department or a group that we deal with that doesn't have some sort of volunteerism or community outreach group that they deal with. And it's not something that they're flashing on our website. We're just doing it because we know it's the right thing to do. And again, a lot of our folks have that servant heart. So I'm excited to participate in this podcast. I am very excited to see what happens and how the mentorship programs grow at Lubbock County, and to see what y'all have to say.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you, Gabby, for getting everybody to make those introductions. This is a really cool mashup of private and public sector, I think, today. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to kick it off with just a broad topic. Anybody can answer. So at this point, if you want to take yourself off mute, this is going to be a conversation. Anybody going to jump in? So what are the current trends? Lisa Blair Davis kind of touched in on, flexibility and remote work, hybrid work. Christina talked about AI. Annie talked about mission driven. So what are the current trends in hiring and workplace development today, according to what you're seeing?
I think there's a skills gap. I think we see that a lot. And I think that's part of what mentorship needs to bring, is bridge that skills gap. We have a lot of folks who will graduate and folks who will have a lot of knowledge, but maybe not have the practical experience. One thing I've learned in the last 2 years, especially, is the kids that graduated during COVID times, my son being one of them, never got a chance to work face-to-face with people during high school or college. And so a lot of that is just skills building and learning what it is to be in person, what it is to be working individually with someone, and have that human connection. And so much of it is remote, but I think a lot of what we can do is build that gap when it comes to, yes, in person, dealing with folks. You still have to work with people in person. And I think the healthcare folks on the call will say the same thing, is there's probably a gap when it comes to having the folks who have the people skills to work with all of our customers and citizens.
Tina, maybe I just build upon that. I think there's so much variation in what the workforce wants, depending on where you are in what stage of life. I mean, are you a new parent? Are you right out of college? Are you someone that wants to go part-time but still wants to contribute? I mean, this, I think, notion of like people are going to retire in their late 50s, early 60s is kind of gone. People want to keep working. They feel like they have more to contribute. But how you combine a workforce with people, over 40 plus years of age differences and variations and kind of expectations of work, I think is something that most people in HR and senior executive roles are trying to balance in their workforces, and just that differences that people want. So it's hard to say like, here's one or two things. I think you could segment the workforce and you'll find differences on that. I think it's also a beautiful opportunity to be better mentors to each other. There are things that the new generation coming into the workforce right out of college can teach those that have been in the workforce for a long time. But we need that workforce that's been around to be open to listening in a very different way. And we also need those that are just graduating and coming in to be very open to learning from those that have been around for a while. And sometimes that doesn't seem to be as open as, I think we would like it. So what do we need to do to enable that to happen? Because, there's a lot to be shared and learned across multi-generations right now.
So what would you advise, Lisa? What would you advise to a college student right now as far as, hey, this is what you should be thinking about as you're getting ready to leave college and move into career? You've mentioned all the different variables and stuff. So do they need to revisit what their definition of success, maybe outside of that, of what the American public or what's, typically seen on screens around the country? Are there certain skills that they should be focusing on? How do they get themselves more open to mentorship? Like what are some of the things that you might share with them?
Well, I'd love to hear from others' perspectives, but I think it starts with purpose and mission. I mean, that came up earlier in this conversation. What I continually see is those entering the workforce now want to know what type of business are they joining or what type of job are they taking on. It doesn't have to be business. It could be, other types of segments of industry. But where can they really align? And then where can they learn from others? When you're on an interview, it is not as much as that employer looking to you to find out about you. It's also you trying them on and figuring out kind of who they are. I would encourage those that are still in school, do as many internships as you can. That is the best way to figure out kind of what is this company made of. I mean, going on an interview, even if you meet with 3 or 4 people, and let's say it's even an hour each, that's only 4 hours. That's a half a day compared to being inside of an organization for a couple of weeks and kind of feeling what that's like. I think there's a lot of convenience of doing interviews via Zoom or Teams or some other virtual type of way, but if you're given the option, go meet at that site, at that location, meet on, face to face with people. You're going to pick up other things that you may not be able to see just through a traditional kind of video interview. I'd also just say, when you're interviewing with companies or trying to figure out, go do your own research. There's Glassdoor, there's Fairy Godboss. There's a lot of other sites that people will share their perspectives of what it's like to work there. So take the time, understand kind of what people are sharing about what it means to work in that environment. And the other thing that I would not underestimate is you cannot define a company necessarily by one boss. People kind of sometimes leave companies based on their boss, but the company is much bigger than that one boss. And so if you like the company and you don't necessarily care for who you work for, where are there ways you can transfer, or where are there other ways that you can go explore other leaders that maybe you gravitate towards more than who you're currently working for? So just a couple thoughts off the top of my head, Tina.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts as to, what are the current trends in workplace development? What advice would you give?
Yeah, Tina. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Christina.
No, that's fine. Go for it.
So I just love what other people were saying and maybe want to pile on a little bit more. I just feel like after the pandemic, the relationship between an employer and an employee fundamentally changed. And for those of us that were in the working world. And so I also would say for advice is for folks to have managed expectations about what that relationship is going to be, right? And so I wake up every day thinking, how am I going to meet people where they're at? Well, guess what? It's almost impossible because everybody is at a different place, right? And in terms of, where they are in their career. And I just think that the blurred lines with a virtual environment also are just continuing to create blurred boundaries. And so just the entire work environment is just fundamentally changed. And I think we're still learning. It's still new for us to really be adopting what does this relationship look like. So I don't know how others are feeling about that, but I feel like it hasn't fully shaken out. For folks that go into an office every day, I think some of that can actually be super grounding. But for folks to come into the working world immediately being in a virtual environment where their onboarding is virtual, that they're having connection through a screen is really tough, right? And so I would also say a lot of organizations still, even in the current political environment, I know we do at Sound, have employee resource groups that are really creating community groups across, so you're actually able to connect, even though digitally, to other colleagues outside of your lane. And to really do that, that means pushing yourself outside of your own comfort zone. But hopefully you do that in school or in other areas of your life as well, so that you have more dimension to that relationship. Because if it's just your boss and your team, it's going to feel a little myopic. And so that's the other piece I would say is it's really incumbent on an individual to really try to reach out and network across the organization to build those bonds in other ways. And if you have an opportunity to get in person with anyone, a lot of organizations have these like geo mapping, like where there are people in your company sitting within 30 minutes of you, go and get coffee with them, right? You will never regret that. So it is forcing those individuals that might have been behind a screen during COVID to really push themselves out of their comfort zone, but it's good for the good of their career.
Christina, I know you had a comment, and it's interesting because you're in the banking world. So a lot of banking is virtual. I know as a customer of your bank, I do everything virtual. I do touch in every now and again to the actual branch, and I love all the people at your branch. So I love that interpersonal exchange. I'm with Annie, like get in front of people as often as possible. But what are some of your thoughts, Christina?
Absolutely. No, first of all, I'm loving this dialogue, and I came with a few thoughts, and I'm going to walk away with a few more because of this dialogue, which I think is fantastic. I think there's three main things that come to mind right now for me. A large part of this is I would encourage anybody, wherever they are in their careers, academic setting at this point or already in the workplace. Number one, remain a lifelong learner, right? The world is changing so much. So whether you're in a formal program or you're post collegiate or anything like that, stay curious. Lifelong learning is huge. And so you may be learning some more technical skills at times. Other times you may be learning more about the business context. You might be learning more about the customer or what success looks like or metrics or who knows. But encourage lifelong learning for all of us. And don't let that end basically when you get the diploma, right? So continue with that. I think another one that is increasingly valuable and often could get lost as somebody moves. Often our collegiate programs really focus, you might have group work, but often you're also graded at the individual level. Whereas in the workplace, in so many industries, as mentioned earlier, everyone's going to be different, right? But so many workplaces really require significant teamwork. And building those internal relationships is extremely important. It might be because you're on a team together. It might be because somebody's in another department. Just about every company I've ever seen is working against some kind of siloing, right? Some departments could be scale and scope. It could be location, whatever it is, there might be silos. So number two, really think about the teamwork and the relationships. I think you're also going to get a lot out of that because let's face it, after school, a lot of your relationships and friendships and you learn a lot from you may be gaining your lifelong friends in your workplace in the future. Who knows? So that's number two. Number three, really thinking about the blending of skills, right? So each one of us might have these discrete skills. Like I know how to do analytics or I know how to do AI, whatever that is. But on an individual basis, we're going to blend all of those skills, the soft skills and the hard skills when we're working on something. We're going to do several skills at once. Likewise, the blending of skills, I think, really goes to some of the conversations I've just been hearing here now on a team. We all bring something to the party. It could be a different skill set. It could be generational differences. It could be context. I've been in the business for a long time or I'm brand new. So the blending of those skills, I think, can be really, really valuable. So I guess just, kind of recap, lifelong learning, let it keep going, right? Keep coming from curious. I'll also add on to that one. That's where even hybrid, there's so much value when you just listen and observe, however you do that. And so even if you're coming into an office, you're like, why am I coming into an office? There's so much to be gained by just being around the water cooler, so to speak, listening in on conversations, shadowing, any of those things. So lifelong learner, number one. Number two, teamwork and relationships, absolutely. And number three, blending of skills individually and collectively.
All great advice. So, if somebody, and I'm working with so many university students, one of the things that we're always fighting data points on and acquiring more information about is the imposter syndrome. The irony behind that is a lot of university students don't understand that the imposter syndrome doesn't stop at the college level, that it continues on and on and on, probably until the grave. That being said, when you're in a hybrid or remote workspace, or you're just coming into the office and you don't have the work experience of folks like you that have been there a decade or more out in business, what would, and maybe we'll start with Derek on this. What would you say, is a good way for younger people, newer generations, to get better involved in work in order to do some of the things that Christina just said? Because they are feeling imposter syndrome. They're feeling a little shy. They're not necessarily going to go to somebody with a higher title, especially if they're in a remote situation, and say, "Hey, can I have a cup of coffee?" So what would you recommend?
Yeah, for sure. So, seeing as though I was in the same position not too long ago, I definitely can relate to what you were saying. I feel like the best thing that, someone who's coming out of college and starting to get into the workforce, no matter what organization you're part of, what industry, I feel like if you keep an open mind, then you're probably going to have much more success than you would otherwise, obviously. Um, by that, I mean, just being open to having those conversations with someone that's, above you and has a higher title, someone who, might be intimidating, or someone who might have this power that, whenever you're just coming out of college, you're probably terrified of. um, just being willing to have those conversations and to learn from them is the main thing. Just because you come out of college, you have your degree, and the first thing you think is I'm invincible, and then you get to the workforce and you're trying to apply. But we see all these trends with skills, like not having the same skills that companies are requiring, yet it's an entry level job, and so that could be discouraging. And so I feel like just being open to having all of that, I guess, guidance from anybody that's above you, even on your same level, that's kind of the key to success, honestly. At least that's been for me.
Thank you. I think a lot of people can resonate with that, especially if they're coming into the workforce. Rachel, Derek just mentioned skills, and you mentioned that earlier in the conversation. Can you identify specific skills that you feel may or may not be taught in the academic setting in a classroom that you feel are necessary to come across in any workforce? What are those skill sets?
Well, it's been over 20 years since I've been in a classroom setting. So I'm trying to think what they're teaching now. Some of the skills, and I know there's a lot of technology skills and there's a lot of networking skills. It seems like that's taught. There's a lot of group work. I work with a lot of students. We had 2 interns last semester. I have 3 interns this summer and this semester. And so I'm seeing a lot of the skills that they have. I think some things that I see missing is the empathy with, and this kind of goes into what you said with the imposter syndrome, is the empathy with folks who may not feel comfortable going completely online. Or, I mean, we have a lot of skills where we have folks who are doing work in our organization, and the younger folks are much more technologically adept, and so there is a lot of they need to empathize with the folks who aren't in that field, in that frame of mind. And so I think from a skills standpoint is, and I talked about it earlier, is the people skills. It's being able to have the one-on-one conversations with folks and have some meaningful dialogue and conversations, and not trying to make it a 3-minute or fit into a 5-minute conversation. It just needs to be organic. So having some empathy. I think there's some, from what I've seen with the college students I work with, they're very, and someone mentioned it, very mission focused, and understanding that some of what they need to do is just time. You only learn some of these things over time, as all my HR folks can attest to on our call. You can't rush what you're learning when it comes to people. You can't rush what happens when it comes to people. They're all gonna react and do things differently. And so spending the time to learn the big lessons, and not thinking that you just are going to get it from the classroom. You have to learn that all people are a little different, and you have to work with all of their all their differences. I'm not going to try to say that word on this podcast. But I think that is one thing, and I touched on it before, is the people skills, and learning the people skills and being patient with folks. So
Thank you so much. So Lisa
Tina.
asks, you get a chance to work with lots of companies across the
Mhm.
United States. You see what people within the companies are saying, this is what's so great about my company. So what can you say based on, not naming specific companies, but
Yeah.
based on what you've learned, what can you share with us about that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it really starts at the top in terms of setting the direction and vision, and then being able to communicate that. So I would say one skill for people to learn would just be overall communications in the workplace, because I think for so many of us in HR, we're tasked with that. And it often feels like we've communicated the same message 25 different ways, and somehow people don't always hear it. So it's about like, how can we, kind of accommodate, especially in these blended workforces. So that's a big one. But I do think something Annie said earlier that really resonated is thinking about the dimensions in the workplace. So it's not just about that one manager or team. Like, do the company's values resonate with you? When you see teamwork, is that what teamwork looks like for you? And it's also about the expectations you have for yourself when you're going into, just launching your career. And my advice to my own children and other, people early in their career is like, you're going to have dimensions to your career, and be open, know that, and expect it, but just like be open in those conversations. So don't just connect with people in your, immediate team, but also think about what are the other positions you want. And it can happen organically, but you can use some of that data that your company might have to really determine if that aligns with you. And so it really starts in those recruiting conversations, as Derek knows, and really just taking the time to learn, what is the culture like? And yes, you can find lots of sources, but you can even ask, like, what do you do internally to get feedback from your employees, and how do you act on that? And, what would your employees say are the strengths of your organization, and what are the opportunities? And I couldn't pass up like not saying something about the imposter syndrome. That is such a great point to bring up to this group and just for everyone. I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced that. And I've done some sessions with early career individuals at our organization. And one of the best like little tips or tricks there is to just imagine, they call it like the bestie situation. So what advice would you tell your best friend if they were in that situation? Because so often like we have the answers, but we almost need someone else to tell us. So think about yourself if you were having that conversation with your best friend. And that's really an area where a mentor can help, because another just piece of advice, life lessons are super important, but you can learn from other people's life lessons too.
Amen.
Yeah.
Tina, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So just two quick things. And first of all, Lisa, I love that you said that. We all have imposter syndrome. I've been in this job for 8 years as a CHRO, and I still go into a board meeting thinking, why am I here? Right. So just everybody needs to know that that still happens. Something that I think it was, who said it? It was Lisa. No, the thing around, actually, Lisa, I think you just said it. The way I explain to folks that are coming into the organization, I always use the metaphor of a rock climbing wall. If anybody's done the where you belay and you go up the wall, you don't usually just go straight up, right? You usually go to the side and you find a little foothold, and then you go over to the other side and you find the arm thing and you go over the side. And people, if they can think about that when they're thinking about their career, it's not just a career path, it's a lattice. It's basically you can go in these different areas, and it actually makes you much more marketable when you can do that. So that's something I was going to mention. And then the other just two skills that I don't really look for functional and technical skills. If you apply for a role and you have those, great. What I look for are the people skills. And the two things that I think are lacking right now is change adaptability. Is something that is organizations have to go through change and change management. I'm sure every person on this call can say that's probably the biggest challenge for an organization when they go, but colleagues have to be prepared for change and be change adaptable. And the other one that I do think, and I have 2 kids in college right now, is they're not great with feedback. They're not used to it. They've been in environments where they haven't gotten, really to make connections with their teachers in virtual environments. And one thing we do here is we do in the moment feedback, and it makes people feel really uncomfortable. So you have to get, harden your skin a little bit, but being receptive to feedback is going to make you, and Derek, I loved your comment about being open-minded. You have to be open-minded to receive that feedback, but I would certainly prepare folks for that kind of interaction with colleagues in the workplace.
Yeah. And Annie, I was going to say something just along those same lines. And what I see as a real differentiator from top performers is their openness to being coached. And you need to be that overt with your leaders and say, I want to be coached. I want guidance. Maybe you've played on a sports team or done other type of team environment. There was a coach that was there kind of giving you tips. And these aren't changing who you are. It's just saying, I am open to refining a few things to make the biggest impact. And that takes some humility. It takes some vulnerability, but it is okay to go into your leaders and say, I want to be coached. That allows that manager, that supervisor, that person working beside you to say, oh, I'm glad that this is open, because Annie, not all cultures are such as you described where they're giving direct feedback. And I think sometimes we have managers that are hesitant to give feedback to the workforce because they feel like that workforce can't take it or that individual is not going to be open to that feedback. So it could start with you as the individual saying, I want to be coached. Put me in. I want to get better at what I'm doing. I have ambitions. Be clear about what your ambitions are. You still need to stay humble about that, but say, I want to be coached so I can be better.
So I'm gonna take all of this because this is really great. This isn't a question that I had sent out to you guys earlier. We're kind of going off script, so thank you for being willing to go off script. Talk about change and adaptability, right, Annie? So let's practice what we preach. So mentor, sponsor, champion is something that we talk a lot about at TERN Mentoring, and we're really focused on the mentor part. So in your own thoughts, in your own business, your own vocabulary, how do you differentiate between a mentor, a sponsor, and a champion within business? And what would you tell the students today as to who they should be seeking, when, and why? So I'll open it up to the floor, whoever wants to go there. Mentor, sponsor, champion. I have my own definition, but I'm just curious. We've got a lot of smart people on this call that work with thousands of people on a daily basis, both public and private. So what say you?
Yeah, Tina, maybe I'll start. I see sponsor and champion can be one and the same. And that is someone that could be in a room. They could be someone who can help make things happen for that individual in the environment that they're in. So maybe it is through connections, maybe it is through direct promotion, maybe it's through new opportunities, whatever that may look like. I see mentors, and I'm probably more intentional about this. Mentors should be people that you feel a very safe space to go and chat with and to get guidance of what you're navigating through. So maybe you work for a large corporation and that mentor can be inside that corporation, but if you work for a small one, don't get confused. You need to have a safe space that's maybe outside of your walls that you can talk to someone about that, so you can be really vulnerable, and they can also share their experiences or give you things. They may not have the answers, but they may have questions that you should go seek out and kind of evaluate. So I see a mentor as someone that is just doing this on behalf of what's the best thing that they want to provide guidance for you in this environment that you're navigating. Whereas a sponsor or champion is someone who's inside that can kind of help make things happen or has connections to make other things happen for you, which is different to me than a mentor.
And Tina, that's Lisa, you took the words out of my mouth. The only thing I would add on the sponsorship is people have to acknowledge, if I'm sponsoring somebody, I'm putting my own brand out there for that person. So I'm putting, I'm willing to put a stake and have skin in the game that individual sees growth, either at my organization or outside. And so I do think that's important, because that's a very defining thing. That's different than a mentor can kind of do that behind the scenes. But as soon as you step into that sponsor, they're holding hands with you, and it's a commitment.
Absolutely. I think just pulling the thread in that last part too, and I'm sure, Tina, while you posed the question, To me, if I'm going to sponsor somebody too, and to your point, of being able to go out there and really kind of staking your reputation in some ways on that, I have to feel particularly comfortable that they're open to coaching and feedback.
Mm,
Right? Because it's not
yeah.
just today and what we both already know about what our history is to this date. 6 months from now, 2 months from now, if something comes up, do I believe we have a continued ability to be able to adapt and pivot and be resourceful and take feedback and things like that, right? So I think that's a excellent connection there. Echo the same thing. Sponsor and champion, I tended to be a little bit closer together. Mentor is a little bit more one-on-one with that person. And I'm also a big fan of like reverse mentorship or peer mentorship. If I was going to learn how to code, it'd be reverse. Reverse meaning it's not a traditional senior, junior, right? Something like that. But somebody's teaching me and mentoring me on a particular skill set, perhaps that I don't have. And then in other cases, it might be more of a career mentor or something along that line. But that might be a little bit more that one-to-one. That might have a different level of, it's a different kind of trust, but they all require a level of trust. Of course, in
So
some instances, you get all in one, right? But
so
that
let me
doesn't happen
ask you,
quite as often.
let me
Yes.
ask you, because you all are in the corporate world. So what we work on at TERN at present is we take folks that are in a professional setting and we bring them back, typically alumni, right? We bring them back to their alma mater in order to support the students that are still coming forward. So that seems to work great. And the reason I'm saying this is because Lisa Blair Davis mentioned, you need to feel like this is a safe space to talk. And so that alumni student thing, they have a common home. They feel a commonality and a safety there, and it's one-to-one. So it's very personal type of mentorship. In the corporate setting, having spent 22 years in corporate myself before becoming an entrepreneur, in the corporate setting, and I'm just going to throw it out there, and I'm going to want to hear, what your opinions are on this. It was far difficult for me to find a mentor in the corporate setting because I felt like we were too close in opportunities that we might be seeking, in what we were working on as far as projects. So that was harder. How do you all in your businesses, how does mentorship happen in your business? Is it more organic? People are seeking themselves out? Are you identifying with a more professional type of process? Maybe even going out to a third party like TERN Mentoring to come in to facilitate these things. How does mentorship happen in the private and public sector?
So I kind of want to tee that up, or that answer is, I know for myself personally and working with the folks that I work with, and I know we talked about this very early in the conversation, is sometimes you have to reach outside your community. So maybe outside of your organization, to, like, for myself, the local SHRM chapter, and then the public sector HR association I'm involved with. Those are the groups that I end up connecting with and getting some of that mentorship, because they speak in the same language as me, and they're also having the same fights. And so we can work through and mentor from that perspective. On the private sector, I didn't have a lot of that unless it was someone who is in another group or organization, and it was across the country. Sometimes it was folks that I knew I had their ear and they had my ear, and even if it was just a call to cry and let it happen, that was the conversation we were going to have, just to get those thoughts out. So I think, especially on the public sector side, in the years I've spent in the public sector, it can be very competitive, and it can be very, it's all dictated by who's been elected and who's making the decisions for that day. And so you have to be able to know that you can have a conversation with someone outside of your organization that you can trust, that you can have those conversations with.
Kind of
Thank you.
building on what Rachel said, that's kind of exactly what we had to do with me. So in my position, I also do our marketing, and I'm the only person in the county that does that. So I don't really have a sounding board that I can, just bounce ideas off of, kind of get help with certain projects, things that, mentor or a mentorship could provide. I didn't have access to that. So what we did was, go and find an organization that's, outside of here, and something I could join, and somewhere I can have all those resources where I can, bounce ideas off of. I can get some help with, say, policy work, things like that. So I think a big thing, especially coming out of college, is being open to asking for that. So if you don't have someone that would be a good mentor or someone that you feel comfortable with, just being willing to ask that and saying, hey, can we find somewhere where I can, either join this organization or find these people that are similar to what I do or, how I think, then that kind of, definitely will help propel you in your career. I've done it so far for about a year now, and it's been amazing, honestly. I have my own mentor through that organization, so it's definitely helped. I don't know. It's kind of lonely whenever you're the only person doing what you do.
As an entrepreneur, I can say yes, absolutely. I can resonate with that. Anybody else on that topic?
Yeah, I'll share what we do. So I think mentoring is individual, right? And the person has to be open to it. So for me, it's something that's in a lot of our individual development plans for employees. But as an organization, we provide a benefit to our employees. So every employee has access to a professional coach for 2 sessions a month, which I wish I would have had access to that in my first, professional role. But that's something that's important to us. And then on the idea of kind of reverse mentoring or kind of micro mentoring, we do something a little bit unique that is also serves as a way for people to connect because we're in 18 states, 2 countries. So we have what we call hot topics, and every other month, we'll get together and 3 employees will present on a topic that is a skill that they have. So May was Mental Health Awareness Month, so we had 3 people present there, which it's always like so great to see what people present, to show up and be so vulnerable. But in March, we had someone that trained her dog in front of us. Another person that presented on playing blackjack. So it could just be anything. It's just, again, going back to the dimensions of the people that you work with, and it's another way to connect. So if you have the ability to put something in place at your organization, that's a very simple thing. And it's kind of someone on my team organizes it, but it's completely driven by our employees. So that's a fun thing that we do. And for the students, I would just say, ask in your interview, like Lisa said, let them know, I want to be coached. What resources do you have for your employees?
That's great. Thank you so much. I need the name of whoever is training their dog because we just got a puppy 3 weeks ago and I'm having a heck of a time. All right. So last couple questions, and I'm going to say a big thank you to Annie Fowler, who I had a chance to connect with before this call. And she gave me this idea. So this is all Annie. What myth would you like to debunk for our educators in the university setting and for our students about the modern day workplace? Is there a myth that, people come in and you're like, no, that's not even true. You're not even close to the mark on this. Like, let me tell you how it really is. I know sometimes I go on Instagram and there are people that do this and I'm like fascinated. I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely the case. So I have my own panel here. What say you, Annie? I'm going to have to start with you since that was your idea.
Oh,
So
I know. Well, actually, I have 2 very concrete things.
Okay.
One is, it's not really debunking a myth, but if I could give people guidance, don't have a LinkedIn photo with you in the car. I'm sorry. Like, get a headshot. Get a good headshot to start your professional career. So when it comes to myth, I mean, it's not really a myth, but it's like how you present yourself and your brand is important. So really be mindful of that if you're getting into the workforce, and don't underclub how you can show up to an employer. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would say to debunk a myth, you're not bothering us in HR when you ask about your application. And you can do it multiple times. And you know what? It doesn't hurt to do it multiple times. I have kids that are like, no, I called once, or I sent an email. Okay, I get 150 emails an hour, right? So my whole thing is continue to stay vigilant. If you have an opportunity and you really want that opportunity, you are not bugging us. We like to see that energy and excitement about a role. So that's coming from my perspective. Others may feel different, but that's something I would definitely say is be an ag.
And all the parents in the world said amen. All right. So thank you for that. Anybody else? I see everybody coming off of mute, so it's like we got a lot of stuff going on. All right, Lisa Blair Davis, go for it.
Yeah, I'll add that there is a part of art and science to interviewing, and practice interviewing and go on interviews for jobs that you do not want, because it helps you get better for when you're sitting in front of somebody for the job that you really do want. So put the time in, practice interviewing, call up, friends, parents, and say, will you go through this with me? People that are in different industries, just practice, practice, practice. Once you're inside of an organization and you want to get another job, treat that like it's an external interview as well. So be serious about that. Don't just think they know me, they'll give me that job. Go after it and be intentional about it.
Great. Anybody else?
I have one. So I would say, yes, there are so many differences between the generations in the workplace, but there are also a lot of similarities. And so I would say focus on what you have in common with those people. At the end of the day, we're all humans and we all have lives outside of work. So that would be it for me. Like, the generations still have more in common than they are different.
I love that. Before anybody else answers, Lisa, it's so funny you say that, because yesterday we had the mentee call and we had the mentor call. And on both calls, that topic of, we're all human. So the mentees were saying, I was so nervous because I didn't know who I was going to be matched with. And then I just found out that this person is just a normal person and they like to do the same things as me. And they found all these commonalities, whether it was in sports or whether it was in a book that they read. And they were like, I had no idea. And the students, again, with the imposter syndrome, had looked at this person's chief of staff at such and such, and they thought there's just no way. I'm like, they didn't elevate to another planet and, grow up on Mars. They're still part of Earth. And then from the mentor standpoint, what I love to hear about the mentors is, wow, these students, they really get to the heart of who I am. Like, having to go back and serve my younger self and remember certain things has made mentors now go back in their leadership roles, remembering the humanity of it all. And so what I loved on that call was just listening to people talk about how they're doing things differently at work because of their involvement in mentorship, and recognizing that we're all just human, right? So anybody else want to debunk a myth or clarify anything for our educators and our students coming forward and teaching?
I don't know if
I
it's a
think
myth. Oh,
go
you
for
go.
it.
So I'll make it quick. I don't know if it's a myth, but it's something I see a lot, and I'm sure Derek can attest to this and everyone can attest to this. Make your resume interesting. I went through a process of hiring some interns this semester, and every single resume looked exactly the same. Be unique. It's okay to be unique. You don't have to have it plain, just be unique. Christina?
Thank you. Echo +1 on everybody's points here. I think there's a fantastic. I think I might also just add on, get out there. And that's like right away, that's throughout your career. Get out there means a bunch of different things. It might be putting out, like, how many resumes do you have to put out there and how much you're distinguishing them, to your point, how much you're checking in. Recognize that when you get out there, there's a lot to continue to learn. You might start to navigate. Somebody mentioned earlier about internships. I'm a big fan of internships. Sometimes you learn what you want to do, and sometimes you learn what you don't want to do. As you get out there, you're finding your future mentor, perhaps, right? I've seen formal and informal mentors. So that networking, that relationship, building that, you learn so much more context. Where do I fit in? How do I mean, in terms of value that you can provide, where do I feel most comfortable? So I think you're going to learn as much as you're kind of getting out of it. And it is a little bit of a law of numbers, right? Being in the right place at the right time. I'd also not get too concerned. There's like one seat in 100 candidates. It doesn't mean you aren't fantastic. Maybe you were like the runner up, right? That's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, too, another reason to kind of get out there. So I think for just getting out there, you're going to continue to learn a lot. You don't know when things are going to hit. I found roles in so many different ways. One role I learned was simply by getting out there and networking. We created a role together. It didn't exist. It wasn't posted. Right. And so as you get out there, you learn a lot more about yourself, a lot more about the world, and where you can provide the greatest contributions.
Awesome. Derek, anything on that one before my final question?
I actually was about to agree, because as a recruiter, you kind of have all of these people coming to you at the very beginning. Um, my main thing is, I've seen a ton of people come to our organization and, have a genuine interest. And that's the main thing right there is, still building that relationship with me. And I've been able to have like these year-long relationships with some of these kids that I've, found places here within the county. They may have applied to a few different departments, and I just kind of help to guide them to what might be a fit. So, building that relationship from the very beginning is kind of the keystone in that, relationship right there. And being willing to develop that and, grow that. I've had so many people just keep reaching out to me, calling me up every now and then, wanting to find out what jobs we have available. So, like everybody was saying, basically putting yourself out there is a big thing. It can be scary, but I feel like that's definitely something that you have to do whenever you're, first getting into the workforce. And sorry, my lights just turned off.
Not
They're
moving enough. Not
automatic,
moving
so I
enough.
have to move around a bit. But yeah, no, it's, necessary to be able to find these positions and find those roles. And you never know when someone's going to recommend you for a position that you didn't even intend on finding. So that's kind of how a lot of things end up, coming to fruition. So
That's awesome. So here's my final question to wrap. Mentorship moment. All right, from everybody. Mentorship moment. So it can either be something that maybe a mentor, and if it is something that a mentor in your life has taught you, please do a shout out for that mentor because we will hashtag them if they're online. And if it's not from a mentor in your life, then what would you like to pay back in mentorship right now to these students that are coming forth? You've already given them such great advice, but we'll go around the horn on this. So I'm going to start with Christina.
One of the first things that comes to mind for me is early in my career, a leader said, "Don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions." And I think that plays forward still to this day.
I'm going to play that for my kids because I tend to say that a lot, probably weekly. Okay, Annie.
Be mindful that the world is small. And what I mean by that is never burn bridges. Always be professional. If you have a interaction with people, just always leave on good terms. You never know when you're going to run into them again. So my advice is just remember that the world is small.
Awesome. Lisa Sordelia.
I would say own your mistakes in most cases, maybe not in Annie's healthcare situation, but most mistakes are something you can fix, but you have to own up to it and let your manager know like right away. That was something my first boss told me. So own your mistakes, but learn from them.
Awesome. Rachel.
I would say always be willing to learn something. I know we talked about that, but you can learn something from everyone. And I've said it more than once, you can learn as much from a good boss as a bad boss. And so remember that you will always learn something from somebody else.
Derek.
I would say trust yourself and the skills that you've gained up to that point. I had a previous boss that told me I wouldn't have hired you if, I didn't trust what you could do, and gave me that kind of freedom to do as I did. So I feel like that's a big thing, is just being able to trust that you're capable of doing whatever job you found yourself into, and you wouldn't be there if it wasn't for a reason.
Awesome. And Lisa?
I'd say two things. Don't underestimate that any job is a job that you can do. I mean, there are going to be things you're like, why am I spending my time on this? But if it's what's needed to be done at that time, roll up your sleeves and get it done. I think the second thing is people are always watching how you're performing. And I think sometimes you underestimate kind of who's observing what you're doing. And I learned this early on at age 16. I was working in Publix down in South Florida. And my manager came and was like, I have noticed A, B, C, and D. And I didn't even know that someone was watching me do those things. It works for my advantage because I was doing some good things, but you're constantly being looked at by your peers, by supervisors, by others in the workforce. So don't forget that.
So I am so inspired by this group. I took away something from everybody. I'm so grateful that you're on this call. I'll add in my 2 cents. Somebody once told me, if you've really put your best foot forward and you would sign your name to that, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen, it didn't go your way. Maybe it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. And look at it from that perspective and keep going. That's all we can do, is do our best. I know everybody out here does their best on a daily basis. You all are connected to lots of humans coming into the workforce, in the workforce, exiting the workforce. You've had to manage through COVID, you've had to manage through hybrid, remote, back in person, and then some. This is an amazing group of not only professionals, but mentors. Many of you are personal to me and are mentors to me. So I would like to say thank you so much for being on this call. I know if I learned a lot, Gabby, you had to have learned a lot. Is there anything you want to say to this group as we close out?
No, I just want to say thank you guys so much for being here today. I learned so much, especially being like, I just finished my freshman year. And honestly, I had been experiencing that imposter syndrome very much, especially coming into this. I was like, why? Like, I feel like I wasn't even qualified to even be speaking with you guys. But even talking with y'all, like, I felt so much better. And I'm so glad that I was able to join you guys today.
Wonderful. With that, Gabby, I know we've got a few things that we wanted to remind our audience, and then we will close out all together. So go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So, of course, a huge thanks again to our amazing panelists. Your insights were absolutely incredible, and I definitely learned a lot today and things I need to work on. With our 4 other groups that will be posted, whether you are a student mentee, alumni mentor, a business leader, or a university partner, your engagement is what makes this community thrive. Together, we're building a network where learning, leadership, and opportunity intersect. I want to give another thank you to Mission Possible team for helping carry out these focus group conferences, and the Scoville Business Leadership Program for supporting future leaders and making this opportunity possible. We'll be posting the full Zoom session on TERN's YouTube and Shorts on LinkedIn and Instagram, so be sure to like, share, follow, and connect with us. You can also check it out at www.ternmentoring.com. Thanks again for tuning in to this podcast.
Thanks for joining us on TERN Talks, the TERN Mentoring Podcast. Want to spark change through mentorship? All of our guest information is in the description below, but be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and tap the bell so you never miss a moment to grow, give, and connect with TERN Mentoring. Let's rise together.